I used to think the worst betrayals came from strangers until the day a man carrying my last name stood in front of me and insisted that something I built, paid for, and protected my whole life somehow belonged to him. If you've ever had someone cross a line you never thought they'd cross, tell me your story in the comments. The drive up to Bend felt longer than usual, even though I'd taken that road most of my life. A neighbor had called earlier, mentioning unfamiliar cars parked near my cabin. He didn't sound alarmed, just puzzled. That alone was enough to pull me back up the mountain. The gravel shifted under my boots when I stepped out of the truck. A low mechanical roar pushed through the trees. The cabin door hung slightly open. Someone had dragged a thick extension cord across the deck, and a faint, burnt odor lingered in the cold air. A portable generator hammered against the floorboards, its casing rattling. A section of cable near the outlet glowed a sickly color insulation curling. A crooked banner for some startup hung along the back wall. Tables shoved together, laptops, open backpacks everywhere, and not a single familiar face. Tyler stood in the center with a clipboard speaking as if the space belonged to him. "This is our headquarters for the weekend. Someone asked whether the owner approved." Tyler didn't flinch. "He's fine with it. My uncle already cleared everything." Heads turned my way as I stepped forward. Tyler offered the kind of smile people give when you interrupt their plans. "Uncle Dan didn't expect you this early." No apology. No awareness of the mess he'd created. His gaze skipped over the overheating cable, the overcrowded equipment the strangers packed into the room. At the edge of the group, a young man slipped on a loose folder, slammed his hand into a metal table, and swore. Papers spread across the floor. Tyler kept talking. "We'll scale operations once the next round comes through," he said, tapping his clipboard, as if nothing had happened. The injured attendee crouched alone, gripping his wrist, while the rest refocused on Tyler's pitch. I stepped back toward the doorway. Distance helped settle my thoughts. Tyler lifted his voice again, telling the group they could use the upstairs if they needed space, fully aware what that room meant to me. The truck door felt heavier than usual when I opened it. Sitting with the engine off, noise fading around me, a stillness took hold. A message waited on my phone from the neighbor who had called earlier, several video clips, showing Tyler leading groups up the trail, using a copied key to access the house, carrying boxes through the doorway, as if it were routine. The diner sat a few blocks off the main road, a place I'd visited countless times after long days on the mountain. Sliding into a corner booth gave me a brief moment to slow my thoughts. The server recognized me and set down a glass of water without asking her glance toward the window, suggesting she already sensed something was wrong. Before I settled, a young line cook stepped out from behind the counter. He wiped his hands on his apron and nodded toward the parking lot. "Heard your nephew's running a big event up there," he said. "Folks are saying it looks impressive." He meant it as casual chatter, but it hit like someone pressing on a bruise. A couple at a nearby table added their opinions, mentioning that cabin conference and assuming I'd backed the whole thing. Small-town talk moves fast, especially when someone's busy shaping the narrative. My phone buzzed non-stop. First my sister, then my brother, then a cousin who only called when trouble brewed. Their voicemails didn't ask how I was. They told me to be reasonable, to stop slowing Tyler down, to let him use the cabin until his business finds its footing. When I finally picked up, my sister didn't bother with a greeting. "He needs this, Dan. Don't make it harder for him. He's risking." She cut me off. "You're overreacting. That place sits empty most of the year. Let him try." The line clicked dead. More calls followed. None of them had seen the scorched cable or the generator shaking the boards. Their entire understanding came from Tyler. Letting the phone fall silent felt like the only sane choice. But that silence became fuel. Notifications appeared, screenshots from social media showing Tyler in my cabin smiling into a camera saying, "My uncle gave me full access. We're building something big here. The lies snowballed. People shared his posts. A man who once borrowed my toolbox wrote proud of this family partnership. The pressure tightened a ring of expectation built on a story I'd never agreed to. A clatter of plates drew my attention to the entrance. Marina walked in wearing hospital scrubs. I hadn't seen her since the night I brought a stranger to the ER. She spotted me immediately and crossed the room with the steady focus of someone used to giving difficult news. "You look like you're fighting a wildfire without gear," she said. I let out a breath, trying to understand how it spiraled so fast. She didn't sit, just rested a hand on the chair across from me. "I heard what's going on," she said. "My neighbor's kid went to that gathering. Said it was packed. Said they used space heaters and some kind of portable setup." "That doesn't surprise me." Her expression sharpened. "Dan, are you sure that place can handle what they're doing?" The question hit deeper than anything my family had thrown at me. No accusations, no pressure, just a direct look from someone who dealt with consequences every day. Her eyes held the calm of a person who'd stitched up too many preventable wounds. "That cabin wasn't built for large groups," I admitted, "and they're bringing equipment I've never seen." She took a slow breath. "Then you need to decide fast. If something goes wrong, everyone will assume you authorized it. No judgment, no scolding, just a fact laid down clean." Marina left after that. A quick squeeze on my shoulder, then she walked out, heading back to her shift. The door shut behind her, and the diner noise rolled back in people ordering sandwiches, forks tapping plates, a baby fussing somewhere near the entrance. Across the room, two men were talking about business permits. One mentioned the startup summit in the mountains like it was the most exciting thing happening all week. Another laughed, saying something about how lucky Tyler was to have an uncle who believes in him. Lucky. That word struck deeper than it should have. Sitting there, it became impossible to shake the sense that I'd stepped into a crowd where every voice was pushing the same direction, none of them aware of the truth. A tide of opinions formed without my involvement, carrying me with it, whether I agreed or not. The plate in front of me stayed untouched. My hands rested flat on the table, while the conversations around me blurred into a single hum. Part of me wanted to stand up and correct every assumption in the room. Another part knew better people believe the version that requires the least effort, especially when a confident storyteller hands it to them. The longer I sat there, the clearer it became. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a narrative Tyler had built, and everyone else found it easier to accept than the quieter truth. I rose, slowly left a few bills under the plate, and stepped outside. The cool air eased the tightness in my chest for a moment. Then the phone buzzed again, another message telling me to support the kid. The drive toward Portland settled into a steady rhythm until a text from an unknown number appeared. "You should review your ownership documents. There's something Tyler hasn't told you. No name, no explanation. Just a warning." A few miles later, an email arrived. Someone who'd attended Tyler's event wrote a detailed message explaining he'd paid a registration fee because the owner, Tyler Mercer, promised an exclusive retreat. He attached a receipt with my cabin address and a logo Tyler had clearly invented. A suspicion formed before I even finished reading. Years ago, during my brother's divorce, I'd let Tyler use the cabin for a short stretch, a gesture of goodwill. Now the question pressed, had he decided that gesture meant something permanent? Another alert chimed. Tyler had removed me from the family group chat. A cousin forwarded a screenshot in which Tyler claimed he was updating security protocols at the cabin. Moments later, my access to the outdoor cameras failed. Password resets bounced back. He'd already taken control. A knot formed low in my stomach. Then, an automated message from Airbnb hit my inbox, addressed to host. I'd never listed the cabin. A trail of past reservations appeared, but full access disappeared as quickly as it surfaced. Only fragments remained in cached notifications. I let the phone fall silent, not as surrender strategy. While relatives repeated Tyler's talking points and he posted confident updates about expanding operations, I focused on evidence. A folder on my laptop filled piece-by-piece payment confirmations accidentally routed to a secondary email images of the scorched cable, a clip from Tyler's live stream where he pitched his fabricated ownership transition claiming I'd approved every step. Every file was another stone added to the bag. Small alone, heavy together. Portland came into view as the road curved along the river. Downtown traffic tightened around me, pushing my mind into the next phase. The law office sat in a narrow brick building I'd trusted for years for estate matters, zoning anything requiring steadiness. I walked in without an appointment. The receptionist recognized me and spoke to one of the partners. Minutes later, the attorney appeared and led the way to his office with the practiced calm of someone who'd seen worse. We reviewed everything. No loopholes, no hidden arrangements, no signature Tyler could twist. The cabin was mine alone. The lawyer even checked the county records while I watched. Nothing altered, nothing pending, nothing implied. He leaned back. "Your nephew has no legal standing," he said. "None at all. Whatever he's claiming, he's inventing it." Relief didn't come, just a heavy, grounded truth. Legality might be on my side, but the story Tyler had built already had momentum. People believed him because belief was easier than verification. And my silence had given him room. The attorney asked if I wanted to issue a cease and desist. Something in me paused, not from fear, but from the disbelief that our family had fallen this far. Leaving the office, traffic moved in steady currents. People hurried past, caught in their own errands. None of them knew my name or cared about a cabin on a mountain or a nephew claiming what wasn't his. That anonymity steadied me. Families often look solid from the outside, but they fracture from small cuts long before a break becomes visible. Tyler's behavior wasn't new. It was simply louder now. Entitlement here, a half-truth there, a habit of bending situations whenever no one challenged him. I'd ignored too many signs. Standing near the tall window by the elevator, watching the street below, the realization settled. This wasn't a disagreement. It was a distortion threatening my name, my safety, and my property. People crossed intersections without knowing how one lie in someone else's family could sprawl far beyond a single household. Traffic thinned as the road climbed back toward Bend. Just before service dropped, a notification flashed. Tyler was broadcasting live again. The thumbnail told me enough: the cabin behind him crowded and noisy, and him claiming it as if he'd built it. The final words before the connection cut were, "My uncle handed this place to me years back. He just never finished the paperwork." Hearing him say it publicly carried a different sting. He'd planted the idea openly where it could spread. Service returned. A message appeared from a neighbor halfway up the trail. Fire trucks headed up. "Strong, burning smell near your place." My pulse kicked. I pressed the accelerator. When the final bend opened to the cabin, a fire engine sat near the deck. 2 firefighters questioned a group of confused attendees. Tyler hovered nearby, hands in his pockets, looking more inconvenienced than alarmed. One firefighter stepped toward me. "Sir, you Daniel Mercer?" "Yes. We got a report of burning plastic and an equipment malfunction. Property's under your name, correct?" The question wasn't accusatory, but the implication carried weight. "Correct," I said. "We need you aware that unpermitted gatherings with electrical hazards put you legally responsible if something goes wrong." People in the cluster stared, whispering. Tyler stepped forward. "It's not his fault," he announced. "He refused to help me fix the setup. If he'd cooperated, none of this would have happened. The firefighter frowned. My jaw tightened. Tyler didn't look at me. He just gestured in my direction like assigning blame was routine. None of the equipment belonged here. None of it was mine. Yet he tossed responsibility at me without hesitation, convinced his version would stick. I kept my voice steady. Tyler, who gave you permission to do any of this? He smirked, turning toward the group. Everyone knows the story. My uncle's had this place forever, and he told me I'd take it over. Paperwork's just behind. Then without waiting, he addressed someone holding a camera. We'll continue once they clear us. He walked off mid-sentence. The dismissal wasn't loud, but it cut deeper than his excuse. The firefighter beside me continued outlining safety rules, though the words drifted past. Not from panic, something colder. Recognition. I was no longer family in Tyler's eyes. I was an obstacle he'd drag through every consequence to protect the image he wanted others to believe. As the firefighters packed up attendees drifted back toward the cabin. Some shrugged at me, as if I were an unreasonable relative interfering with a young man's dreams. Tyler ascended the steps with a swagger. Just stay out of the way, okay? The air seemed thinner. Staying passive now would let him erode whatever stability I had left. Every lie would harden into something harder to undo. I reached for my phone. The folder I'd been building videos, screenshots, the burned cable complaints waited. My thumb hovered for a moment, then tapped my lawyer's contact. Attachments loaded. The email sent. A single soft click. No spectacle. Just a line crossed for the last time. Another message followed, forwarding the livestream clip, where Tyler claimed ownership. One more with the details from Airbnb, another with the neighbor's note. Each one nudged this situation from chaos into something structured. When the last file uploaded, a sense of finality settled, nothing triumphant, nothing relieved. Just a shift, a subtle internal turn toward whatever came next. People still filtered in and out of the cabin. Tyler laughed loudly with someone leaning against the doorway. The firefighter gave me a tight nod before returning to his truck. I walked back to mine, opened the driver's side door, and sat down without starting the engine. The phone rested on my knee screen, dimming slowly, the lawyer's acknowledgement already appearing in the inbox. The phone rang before I finished my first cup of coffee. An unfamiliar number lit up the screen. Letting it go to voicemail sounded tempting, but something nudged me to answer. A man cleared his throat. His tone sat low, guarded. Mr. Mercer. You don't know me, but I've worked with Tyler on a few projects. I think you should be aware of something. A pause stretched long enough to suggest he was choosing his words carefully. He's been telling people he owns your cabin outright. Says you gifted it to him years ago. He's also suggesting he might use it as collateral for a funding round. My fingers stiffened around the mug. He said that there's more, the caller replied. He's been pitching investors. He included your cabin as part of his asset portfolio. Before I could respond, an email arrived in my inbox. The man said he sent it while we spoke. Opening the attachment revealed a glossy pitch deck, Tyler's work, without a doubt. The first few pages flashed with buzzwords. Then a photo of my cabin appeared framed beside a caption that read, "Property transferred internally. Documentation pending finalization." A lie typed out, neatly packaged for investors and distributed like it was fact. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "You seem like a decent guy," he muttered. "And I don't want to be tied to whatever fallout's coming." He ended the call before I could ask anything else. The day didn't slow down after that. Leaving the house turned into a necessity just to clear my head. When I pulled into the hospital parking lot to drop off some forms for a routine check, Marina stepped out from the ER entrance. She spotted me and waved me over. "You're here early," she said, tugging off her gloves. A tired crease ran across her forehead. "Rough night for us. Had a young guy come in from a retreat up in the mountains. Hurt his leg pretty badly. My breath caught for a moment. Which retreat, the one your nephew's running? She lowered her voice. He said the setup wasn't safe. Overcrowded, poor wiring. But the owner told him everything was approved. Her implication didn't need embellishing. He named Tyler, I asked. He said, the owner is the uncle, and that the uncle gave permission. She paused, studying my reaction. Is that true? No. Her stance shifted, arms folding loosely. Then he's dragging you into something much bigger than family drama. Hearing it from someone who dealt with negligence every day cut deeper than anything I'd read or heard so far. She wasn't scolding or choosing sides. She was stating facts the way medical staff do when consequences are no longer theoretical. My phone buzzed again. Then again. Tyler had posted a flurry of updates videos, captions, staged photos. One clip showed him sitting on the deck railing of my cabin, leaning into the camera. My uncle's slipping these days, he said with a half laugh. Doesn't remember what he promised me. I'm trying to be patient. Some people fight change because it threatens their ego. Scrolling further opened a wall of comments, strangers calling me stubborn, outdated, selfish. Others repeated Tyler's narrative, as if they'd witnessed it themselves. Friends of his chimed in with embellished stories, each twisting the truth a little more. No one questioned the claims. They amplified them. Watching it didn't spark rage. Something sharper formed a recognition that silence no longer looked like restraint. It looked like surrender. Marina stepped closer. Dan, she said, you're not doing anything wrong. But if you stay out of this, he gets to define you for everyone else. Her words didn't push. They aligned a truth I'd avoided. Boundaries matter. I'd erased too many of mine for years, choosing peace, avoiding conflict, absorbing disappointment, so others didn't have to. All it had done was teach Tyler that every line was flexible. She touched my elbow. People believe the version told the loudest. You deserve to tell your own. For a moment, I stood there realizing how much guilt had shaped my decisions, how I excused him, softened consequences, let patterns slide until they became something unrecognizable. The decision formed without drama. No vow, no declaration. Just a settled understanding doing nothing now meant losing everything later. I walked to the truck with a steadier step. The folder from earlier chapters rested on the passenger seat. I pulled it closer, gripping it like a hinge between past and next steps. The following days fell into a pattern. Every spare hour went toward reviewing anything tied to Tyler emails, transactions, stray receipts. Archived folders surfaced payments from strangers dating weeks before I discovered his operation. Screenshots from live streams. Clips neighbors recorded pictures of burned wiring. All of it filled the timeline I laid out. Dates, names, amounts, timestamps. Piece by piece, the picture solidified. He hadn't drifted into this. He'd engineered it. Once everything sat in order, I drove to the law office. The folder barely closed around the stack. My attorney scanned through the documents with growing concern. He didn't rush, didn't sensationalize, handled it like any case involving property violations and financial misrepresentation. We'll activate a property protection clause, he said. That halts any further events immediately. Another form slid forward. This documents the safety hazards. It shields you from liability if anyone gets hurt. A final set addressed fraudulent commercial use. When we file these, he said, he loses any claim of authority. Completely. Nothing about it felt triumphant. It felt necessary, like sealing a leak before it undermined a structure. Driving home brought a new kind of tension. A dark sedan sat parked across the street, engine off, windows up. The vehicle didn't belong to any neighbor. No one stepped out. It simply stayed there, inert yet deliberate. The next morning it appeared again in the same spot. Suspicion grew when unfamiliar emails started flooding my inbox. Each contained a link disguised as an invoice or document request. The names didn't match any real companies. Patterns in the timestamps revealed they were sent in clusters, as if someone hoped I'd slip and click one out of frustration. Then came the text message. "You'll regret this. Stop interfering with my future." No name but the style matched Tyler's earlier tone, a mix of entitlement and desperation wrapped in a threat. Saving the message took only seconds. Adding it to the evidence file took a few more. No spike of fear, no rush of adrenaline. Something steadier replaced both an internal shift, long overdue, a sense of standing straighter from the spine outward. Later that afternoon, another email arrived from the county assessor's office. Tyler, or someone advising him, had filed a request to verify ownership capacity, a tactic often used to imply an owner is unfit to manage their property. He'd pushed the conflict into legal terrain, hoping scrutiny alone would pressure me. Another line went onto the timeline. Everything pointed in the same direction. They were laying the foundation for a final move, something meant to corner me or force a concession. My response didn't need debate. Passwords changed, cloud backups locked, access to every platform connected to the cabin shut down, rental sites, utility portals, old management accounts all sealed. Any door Tyler thought he could slip through, I closed. Once the digital cleanup settled, calm returned. A measured clarity took over. Every claim he made, every document he forged, every attempt to reshape the story was logged in the archive without emotion, just facts cataloged and dated. By evening, the apartment felt still as I sorted the last batch of printed pages into labeled folders. The stack had doubled in a week. The timeline stretched from early spring to the present, each line sharpening the outline of his intent. What began as a breach of trust had become a full-scale effort to erode my rights and rewrite my identity. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was escalating. A lamp cast a warm circle across the paperwork. A low mechanical vibration from a neighbor's dryer slipped through the wall, ordinary background noise, but none of it softened the sense that this phase was ending. Pressure had been building in slow increments. Something larger approached. Leaning back, I let my eyes rest on the binder weighing the next steps. The signs all pointed to an approaching breakpoint. The envelope from the county waited at my door the next morning, marked urgent. It contained a notice a complaint about unclear ownership had triggered a mandatory property review. The wording didn't disguise its source. Tyler had finally pushed his challenge into formal channels. Before I finished reading, the phone rang. The fire department. An officer explained they'd received notice of a much larger gathering being planned at the cabin. He asked if I knew anything about significant activity for the weekend. His tone carried caution, the kind used when a problem is one spark away from becoming dangerous. "We're concerned about wildfire risk," he said. "If the attendance numbers we're hearing are accurate, this could get out of hand." My grip tightened. The call ended. The morning lasted only a breath before the next wave hit. By lunch, my brother's wife called. She didn't wait for a greeting. "Do you know how bad you're making Tyler look? Everyone's talking about it. People think you're punishing him for trying to build a future. Why can't you support him for once?" Not a single question about truth. No curiosity about what he'd been doing. Just accusation layered with obligation. "You're embarrassing the family, Dan. This is beneath you." She hung up. 3 storms before mid-afternoon, all triggered by Tyler. The 4th surge came quickly. My attorney forwarded a scanned complaint filed with local police. Tyler accused me of harassment and of interfering with his lawful business operations, painting himself as a young entrepreneur crushed by an oppressive relative. Reading it didn't provoke panic. A colder steadiness settled in. He had crossed into a realm where truth meant nothing. Narrative meant everything. Driving toward the mountain felt inevitable. Before taking the final step, I needed to see what he was doing with my own eyes. The road wound upward. More cars appeared along the trail, vans, SUVs, compact cars wedged into narrow bends. The crowd was larger than before. At the cabin door, a surge of voices met me. I turned the handle and stepped through. Tyler stood in the middle of the living room clipboard, raised, assigning tasks as if conducting staff. Confidence radiated from him, shoulders squared, chin angled, every motion claiming ownership. When he finally faced me, his grin held triumph. "You're too late," he said. "You don't have any authority here anymore." He projected the line deliberately. He wanted witnesses. My emotions stayed level. No spike of anger, no trembling hands. I took out my phone. A few photos captured the setup equipment, strangers, the improvised staging. Switching to video, I recorded him barking orders, declaring the cabin my property, and calling it our permanent headquarters. He didn't soften the lie. Then the audio clip sealed itself with his exact words. "You don't have any authority here." I stepped out without a word, past the rows of parked cars, walked far enough down the trail for reception to return, and sent everything to my attorney: photos, recordings, notes. A new message went to the county, a formal request to halt all activity at the cabin due to unauthorized use safety violations and ongoing fraud connected to Tyler's events. Sending it didn't feel like a win. It simply marked the moment his fabricated structure hit something immovable. The county responded faster than expected. Within 48 hours, my attorney forwarded confirmation an investigation had been opened into Tyler's commercial use of the cabin, his electrical setup, and the reported safety risks. The evidence file we'd built left little room for hesitation. By week's end, officials posted a notice on the cabin door. All activity stopped. A crew set up a temporary barrier while assessing the damage from the equipment Tyler had hauled in. Seeing the photo sparked a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in months. News traveled quickly through the family. Those who had defended him shifted tone once the documents circulated. Screenshots of his posts, recordings of his claims, payment trails, county reports, none of it could be argued away. A few relatives offered half-formed apologies for misunderstanding, but most kept their distance, retreating from him without acknowledging it. His business partners moved even faster. One withdrew from an upcoming project, calling him a liability after learning he'd used property he didn't own to impress investors. Another issued their own cease and desist for misrepresenting affiliations. 2 attendees from his last event filed small claims after injuring themselves during the retreat. The consequences he'd dodged for months finally aligned. With the investigation active, I completed the remaining steps. Every digital access point tied to the cabin utilities reservation profiles, camera logins shut down. None of his credentials survived. My attorney drafted a formal notice revoking any past permissions, and I signed each page without hesitation. The cabin no longer felt like part of my future, so I accepted an offer from a local restoration company known for repairing older timber homes. They appreciated its bones and wanted to preserve its character. Handing the keys to their representative brought no grief, only a release, the sense of closing a door Tyler had pushed far beyond its hinges. Eugene offered a softer pace. The apartment I found near the river wasn't large, but it suited my life now. Unpacking took an afternoon. A few framed photos, a worn jacket, a toolbox that had followed me through 3 homes. Everything else found its place without effort. A week later, the nonprofit I'd contacted called back. They needed someone with a mechanical background to help install water filtration systems in rural communities. The coordinator sounded surprised. I wanted part-time work, but she welcomed me. The job didn't promise prestige or advancement, which suited me fine. It gave shape to the days and left my mind clear. During my second week in Eugene, Marina stopped by. She'd been in town for a training seminar and asked if we could meet briefly near the river path. When she arrived, she studied my face the way medical professionals often do, assessing quietly, without pressure. "You doing all right?" she asked. A small nod answered her. It was enough. She didn't push for a story or explanation. We talked for a few minutes about her ER shifts, the travel, the exhaustion of medical work, and then walked back toward the parking lot. She patted my arm before leaving a gesture simple enough to settle something inside me. Days moved forward without interruption. Emails from the attorney slowed to a trickle, each one confirming another administrative closure. Tyler didn't contact me, and I didn't check on him. The cabin belonged to someone else now, and whatever he faced because of his choices had nothing to do with me anymore. One evening after finishing a volunteer shift, I wandered toward a small wooden bridge not far from the apartment. The river moved steadily beneath it. Standing there, hands in my pockets, the lingering tension that had clung to me for months eased in a way that didn't need analysis. No declarations formed in my mind. No triumphant feeling rose up. The weight had simply thinned out, replaced by the plain truth that my life had shifted back into my own hands. The breeze carried the sound of someone biking across the path behind me. I stepped aside, letting them pass, then continued walking with no destination in mind, letting the day settle where it needed to.